House in Baltimore, and I don't know if it was the loss on Friday or the loss on Saturday or the loss on Sunday or watching the Penguins skate the Stanley Cup late into the evening on Sunday, but I needed a little bit of like therapy around here. When I need therapy, I go to Portland, Oregon to bring in our old pal, Bizball Mari from Forbes Magazine. He is, of course, Maury Brown, and you can follow him out on Twitter at BizballMaury. And, I know you were even getting in on this Yankees destruction and Aaron Judge destruction of Oriole pitching this weekend, right?
Yeah, I was. It's still early, right, Nestor?
It's early.
Things can change awfully fast. But the thing that surprises me the most about the Yankees is that the players that they're developing are developing much faster than I think anybody really anticipated. Maybe fans, maybe some, diehard fan. But
even Brian Cashman in his wet dreams could not have thought that two superstars would emerge before, like, the All-Star break the following year, right?
Yeah, man. Both Judge and Sanchez look awfully good, and they're both hitting for power, and not just a little bit. I'm sure that anybody that watched the Orioles series will tell you, that it just wasn't pretty.
We're still waiting for them to land, dude.
Yeah, they're still. I believe that one of them ties for like second longest of the year behind Chris Bryant. I want to say it was Judge's, but only Giancarlo Stanton had one longer. And it just, I've said this for a long time. I said that 2018 was going to be the year to really watch out for the Yankees. Well, I may have been off by a year. I think that it's a pleasant surprise for the Yankees right now that they are doing what they do. And once again, man, we got a whole lot of baseball left to play. But, right now they are clearly in a better position than I think a lot of people anticipated. And I dare say that they will they're either going to make the playoffs. I think that at this point, I think that there's a pretty good chance of that. But next year, I think that they have a real good shot of winning another World Series. And if they go out, if they can afford and reset and recalibrate their luxury tax right now, and that's a big deal right now, Nestor. Both the Dodgers and the Yankees are lowering their payrolls. And once you reset and get below the luxury tax threshold, it resets the amount of tax rate that you get dinged with for every dollar.
It's kind of like a workaround that was created to sort of incent them to spend less money, right? The whole idea was that, but what it's going to do is allow them to set below the bar and then go back and spend more later.
Exactly. And let's not kid ourselves. The luxury tax was ostensibly set up to stop the Yankees. Right now, of course, the thing that's really amazing is that we've seen 5 teams now. We've seen more than a few teams starting to go above it. Whether it's been the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Red Sox, the Tigers, the Giants, the Cubs. You're starting to see this happen more often. But it was really designed to basically try and blunt the incredible amount of spending that was going on in the 90s by the Yankees for veterans. Well, here we are. They're dumping veteran payroll right now, and they're living and dying off their prospects, and they've been pretty doggone great. I'm sure that you've got a lot of listeners that are like, just shut up. I hate the Yankees, but you have to admit they look really good. And if they go out and they have the money and they're able to recalibrate, the idea that they could sign somebody like Bryce Harper or any number of players that are going to hit in one of the most incredible free agency crops that we have seen in a long, long time this offseason, well, that doesn't bode well if you don't like the New York Yankees.
He is Bizball Mari on Twitter. He's our pal Maury Brown from Portland, Oregon, but also from Forbes Magazine, one of our favorite friends and foils and rock and roll foes to discuss rock and roll and the baseball business. And this is where the business kicks in, Mari. And, I want you to look from afar. I'm releasing the Peter Principles this summer. I'm going back to stuff that happened 20 years ago, 15 years ago, 10 years ago. I think a lot of the fans here have been sort of lulled to sleep because Buck has been quiet. Duquette clearly wanted out of here a year and a half ago to go to Toronto. Has not been allowed to be, removed from the situation here. He's, quote-unquote, running it at this point. The contracts that are up at the end of 18, I know Ken Rosenthal alluded to this over the weekend. Machado, Adam Jones, Zach Britton, but Buck Showalter and Dan Duquette at the end of next year as well. Maury, this is a really tender period, these 6 weeks, after getting your ass kicked at Yankee Stadium, to look at it and say, well, where are we going to be in 18 months or 24 months or 36 months? And this has never been, I don't know if you were an old professional wrestling fan, but I was always a fan of the guiding light, Captain Lou Albano. And there's no guiding light here in this Oriole organization. And the notion that Showalter's going to take over as a general manager at some point in the future, and that there's some sort of discord. But in every other organization, they would be looking at a thing like Machado and saying, well, that's an asset. I can pick up a bunch of minor league players, the way the Moncada Sale deal worked. Around here, I'm telling you, dude, dealing Machado's not on the table. I mean, I don't know that anybody would even think about it around here, even though he's hitting 220.
Yeah, man. I mean, and this is really tough, right? So how are you going to address having a bunch of players hit like this? And the thing that always kills me about this, Nestor, is that, look, there's no way in the world that Dan Duquette didn't have this, happening on his calendar, a long, long time ago. This isn't just like, oh, wow, we got another, 6 weeks, 8 weeks, half a year, whatever it's going to be. This has been on the calendar for a while. And you begin to wonder, there's a couple things. One, you always go, fans, I can never get this, right? Fans are always like, what the heck is up with my club? Why are they not signing this guy to an extension? And the only thing that I can say about that, and I am not privy to any of this, Nestor, is that it's a two-way street. I mean, players have to want to stay. Agents have to want to work with GMs. The budget has to be there, and there has to be a willingness on both sides to make it happen. I imagine that they're going to pick. I mean, you mentioned Britton, you mentioned Jones, you mentioned Machado. I imagine that they're going to try and retain. If they can retain two, it would be I think a masterstroke at this stage. I think that
they've never spent money on a reliever, Maury. You know what I mean?
They have never done that. I think that it would be. I think that would be very difficult, and they need to do something about it. And I do think that you do have to start to go have some reality. And have to start to say, I have to retool.
Can we win the World Series this year? That's the first question.
No, they're
right?
not winning the World Series. I really don't see it. It's not that they're. The thing that amazed me, I was talking to an announcer of a AOS team here that I've known for a long time, and he said something that I thought rang really true. Is that there's really one or two really good teams in baseball. There's a lot of really mediocre teams. Especially out my way. In the AOS, there's really the Astros and there's everybody else. But what
same thing in the NL East. I mean, the Nationals, they're going to win the division. It's just by how many games and whether they're going to want to be a 1 seed and how hard they're going to run those arms in September, where they've always sort of put the brakes on those guys.
Yeah, and this is what I'm kind of getting to. I mean, so things can happen. The thing that's surprising is. And of course, this is silly to look at, but I still do it. The Seattle Mariners were a game and a half out of the wild card. They were at 500. I mean, this is just crazy. You start to sit there and you go, there's really the chance one team goes on a slide, another team gets hot, at the right time.
Injuries are going to happen. You know that, right?
Things are going to happen. And this is what I think is really bad now for front offices, is that they sit there and they go, you know what? We can't pull the trigger now.
Yeah, we're still in it, right? Exactly. Well, everybody in the AL East thinks they're in it, right? I mean, even the Blue Jays in a year where they felt like that they were, alive in the offseason and they got off to that horrific start. I mean, they're not out of it. They're 2 games under 500. I mean, they're there. All of these teams can say that, but then you got to say, well, if you're the Orioles and Gosman's got an ERA of 7 and Miley's giving you 3 innings of start and Bundy's the only guy you can count on and they're looking to Norfolk every 5th day for something, and Machado's hitting 220, maybe this just isn't your year. And seeing what the Yankees have rebuilt here, Maury, has I think opened the eyes of a lot of people, but making those kinds of deals, you really got to give Cashman some credit. And I don't know who I trust in the Orioles organization to make the decision to throw the towel in, to deal away players, and to bring back real prospects, because this organization is bereft of prospects, especially with arms.
Yeah, I think that we're not there yet, clearly. But I think that there has to be some discussion about it. I mean, if you're sitting in this position and you're creeping up and you're after the All-Star break and you're there at the trade deadline, or you're even after the trade deadline, you're starting to go, all right, we either need to go in and trade to try and get a rental for 3 months or something to that effect, basically to try and push our way in, or we need to start to think about next year. And this is always the hardest thing, because it is really difficult to try and figure out when to throw the towel in and whether you do it. I mean, you mentioned the Nationals, and I mean, we have seen some stuff with the Nationals that has been really surprising. And some of it, of course, is trying to keep assets. I remember the Strasburg and basically shutting Strasburg down, and I never understood that. Because I knew what the logic was. It was, well, we got an asset, we got to save him. It's like, well, but your opportunities, nothing is a given, right? Your opportunity may not be there, and lo and behold, the opportunity hasn't been there.
Well, look at the Yankees right now. We have them in the playoffs 8 out of the next 10 years, but they're there now. So, once the end of July rolls around and there's a pitcher out there or a Quintana or whatever out there, that, they've always been that team that wants to go all in and say, Astros, Schmastros, you know what I mean? Like, we'll get to the World Series this year, and I have no thought that they won't do that 6 weeks from now, and certainly they have the money to do whatever they want to do.
Yeah, and this is, the difficult thing that the Orioles have always seemed to be stuck in, and that is no man's land. And by that I mean they either spent really badly for many years on veteran talent that was over their prime, that was basically, names that you could stick on a roster and it wasn't good. They could never seem to get themselves to a point of truly blowing it up and going and doing like what the Astros have done. That's a very difficult row to hoe. It's just, you cannot, it's really taking a major investment by your fan base to do something like that. Now, the Astros could get away with it because they had a new owner. And he was like, you know what, I haven't built up anything one way or another at this point, and I'm just going to make a statement and put my stamp on it, and it's clearly working. Angelos has been there for a long time. He seems pretty set in his ways. You mentioned a couple of things there with Duquette clearly wanting to walk, whether you're going to move Showalter into the GM position. I don't know if that makes things any better or worse, because it really is. I've seen this. We have seen this, you more than I, for years and years and years. How many more GMs, how many more chances are you going to get to try and get this right? And they just can't. They seem to do very, mediocre. And you have a couple of years.
Let's look at the pitching in the offseason, Maury. I mean, you and I talked in October. I know you harbored some thoughts about coming into National Harbor for the owners' meetings. I didn't even make it down there. And we talked about pitching. And, they came back with Wade Miley and Ubaldo Jimenez. And this is how they're going to do things. And they dealt off Gallardo for Seth Smith to your Mariners. And, now you look up and you say, who is going to pitch? Who is going to pitch for this team? And there's no there. And I think when you're dangling with 100 games left on the calendar and you're wondering how you're going to survive every 5 days, this is a bad spot for them to be in right now. And especially with this decision-making phase over the next 6 weeks and so much dangling down the line, especially around Machado. And the one thing I don't think they were prepared for was him hitting 220.
Yeah, and, that I think that, whether he's hitting 220 now or whether he's hitting 220, at the trade deadline, look, it's Machado. I think that someone would take a gamble on him in a heartbeat. They would go, what he really needs here is a change of zip code. It's
But if
always
he's going to
surprising
leave in a
to me,
year and a half, you got 800 at bats left for him anyway, right? I mean, literally, right?
Yeah, I'm always surprised at where GMs will say that it's just they think that it's where they're at, and given a circumstance, they can make themselves better, and it happens, right? I mean, it certainly does, and that's why. And you just look at him defensively and everything else that goes along with it. You go, it's different than like where I'm watching Felix Hernandez, and I'm going, yeah, you could kind of see the decline hit. And granted, different, completely different situation, pitcher, of third baseman. But it is one of those things to where when is the right time to move pieces? When do you do extensions? Do you have a culture by which you want, or a player wants to have an extension? So go ahead. We can talk about Harper. Harper, I think, is like, you know what? I got Scott Boras, and I think the idea of $500 million and dangling that out there as a possibility, I think is a possibility. Now, granted, I don't know how they do it unless they do it for like 15 years, which would be absolutely stupid. But we have seen more and more. We've seen an awful lot of stupid deals. Some of them, and I can only think of one, that is actually turning out somewhat reasonable, even in decline, and that has been Pujols. But, I mean, man, it's just, this is what it's come to. It's become very difficult to get the money for the superstar players that you want at a young enough age. For the money that they want, you have to stretch it out over the year so that you can have some payroll flexibility, and you wind up with an albatross at the end of their contract life. So, I mean, it's just difficult. Machado's going to score on this thing in the offseason. Whether it's in Baltimore or elsewhere. I'm serious, man. If the guy is hitting 250 at the end of the season, I still think that he hits a huge payday. He's just too electric defensively, and the possibility that it'll be like, it was just an off year.
He is Bizball Amari. You can follow his journey out on Twitter as well as at Forbes and Sports Biz. I've gotten to know him through our baseball journey here together, and it's been kind of an interesting year, right? Luke and I are going to be going down to Miami for the All-Star game. We've kind of signed up for that about a month ago, so we're going to do that together. And I don't know what we're going to get there, but I know it's this incredible intersection of a whole new generation of baseball players. And I think every time we get together, we talk about the Nolan Arenados and the Aaron Judges, or whomever it is, Machados, Bryce Harpers, Trouts. There's so many young players in this game that are excelling at this point, but I think it's for the young teams. It's for Minnesota and Sano. It's for Milwaukee coming on this year, Colorado coming on, Arizona, and a guy like Goldschmidt coming on. There really is some new blood this year in this whole thing that the Cubs were going to run away and hide, or the Dodgers or the Indians or the Red Sox. None of that has happened, and we're getting up on the All-Star break now, Maury.
Yeah, and man, I tell you the thing about this, and so I'm thinking about this from what I cover right in my beat, is I'm really surprised that we don't have more marketing around baseball stars. Part of it is the dynamic of the game, right? It's very different. You've got a player, if it's an offensive player, you've got him up to bat, every inning and a half, 2 innings, right? So you don't get much face time with them there. Pitchers, of course, are every, maybe fifth day. And so you get into that to where it's very hard to market around them. You don't have the visibility that you have, certainly in basketball. In football, I think the interesting thing about it is that it's just its own animal. Even with helmets on, the stars of that game. And so, but it just surprises me that here we are. I mean, the game is, every time I talk to the commissioner's office, it's like, look how exciting it is with all these young players. We have this young talent, and we're really, turning
I bet Giancarlo
Stanton
could walk through Manhattan and no one would know who he is.
No, probably not. And that, I think, is a real problem. But, I mean, it is one of those things to where, I think a lot of young fans are turned on by the game itself. It's just that as a household thing, it's not there. I don't see baseball players doing Campbell Soup commercials. I just can't see it. For whatever reason, Wall Street and the marketing people there just haven't tapped into baseball. And it is one of those things that is kind of, I don't know what it's going to take. If you can't tap into Chris Bryant with all, he's a good-looking kid. He's got the $1 million smile. He's an MVP. He's on a World Series championship team, and yet I would think that guy would be marketing gold. And then really what we're seeing is Harper, which of course, is kind of interesting because I think there's a faction of the baseball fans that really hate the guy. So
we saw the brawl 2 weeks ago too, right?
Yeah. Well, that situation, holy cow. Well, I'm surprised, I'm not, for 2 seconds I'm going to go there. Strickland's never been a decent person, right? I had people going, well, Harper got strangled by, one of his own relievers. I go, it's like, it's Jonathan Papelbon you're talking about. I mean, if you're going to use Jonathan Papelbon as your measurement for Strickland, then that tells you, I think, pretty much everything you need to know. He's just not a very well-liked guy. But neither is Harper, so it gave us something to talk about for a little bit. But, it's that the thing with the game is the thing with the game. I think that it's exceptionally healthy. I think some rainouts haven't been good. I think that attendance right now is hanging around 200 or 300 less per game across the league right now, which is somewhat surprising.
They're struggling here, Maury. I mean, they got off to a nice start, and they're not drawing. I mean, when they give away bobbleheads, when they give away a T-shirt, when there's something special going on, people will come out. But on a Tuesday night, even when it's a good pitching matchup, people stay home. They watch the games on TV now, and that's a problem across, the NFL's struggling with that as well.
Yeah, and, I think it'll be fun for you and I to talk about, attendance, television, all that stuff that goes on with the NFL as we creep up on the year. But in baseball, the television ratings right now are ridiculous. And at the local level, they're crushing it. Yes is crushing it. FS1 is seeing the best start to their baseball coverage that they've ever had. And so it gets down to, do you go out to the games? Is it, one of those things to where I think that a lot of it has to do with summer. And I think that a lot of times, getting people to go out to springtime games is tough. I mean, if it's tough and it's cold for me to go to a game with the roof closed in Seattle where the wind can still blow in, but there's no rain. I mean, I can't imagine what it's like playing out east on, if I'm playing in Philly or if I'm playing in Baltimore or if I'm playing in New York. I mean, it's cold and it's miserable. It really requires some dedication. And I think that fans are getting softer as television has become much more palatable and a lot more accessible, and you can stream stuff now. So, it'll be interesting to watch. I think they continue to hang around 73, 74 million, which is nothing to sneeze at, obviously, in attendance. And I think that that television will continue to be very well for them, and the streaming numbers are going to go up. Baseball is not dead. Anybody that says that is crazy. But it is, once again, how are they going to measure that? How are they going to get new fans, and how are they going to grow it? And I think the marketing of the game, of its players, needs to happen and be somewhat better.
Maury, always love having you on, man. What's going on with the band, Shoot the Thrill? I've been wearing the Shoot the Thrill shirt sometimes around here. I did think of you on Sunday. The score was like 14-3. I'm watching the Yankees-Orioles game. I'm watching the Masson version, and I heard the organist at Yankee Stadium play the intro to You Shook Me All Night Long on the organ at Yankee Stadium in an 11-run ball game. And I had never heard You Shook Me All Night Long played on a stadium organ before. It was a little weird.
I think that's great. Now the band's, we're about ready to go into hyperdrive here. It's the summer and a lot of outdoor stuff. I do one more indoor show in week from Saturday. I'll do my last indoor show, and then it's all outdoor stuff, big outdoor festivals with, a few thousand people. There'll be a 2-day thing where there's 6,000 people every day, and some other stuff where, there's 5,000-6,000 people, sometimes more. So, things are good. July I'll play every weekend and doing a lot of outdoor stuff, so it's a lot of fun.
The band is Shoot to Thrill. The man is Maury Brown. He is Bizball Maury out on Twitter, and our pal from Forbes and out in Portland, Oregon. We love talking baseball with Maury. I know you were watching a little bit of that Yankee nonsense over the weekend, and, I figured you come on and kick the Orioles gently while they're down, but not kick them too much.
Not too hard. But, hey, Nestor, before I go, I have to say this. You have to do the world a big favor for us, all right? Don't ever bite through your tongue again. Can you do that?
Dude, it was horrible. I mean,
you sound fine though. I have to admit this for all the listeners.
It's a little Cindy Brady thing going on, but I have a little bit of a lisp. I'm struggling with the P's and the T's, but by the middle of the week I'll be fine. But It is very,
How's
very
your
strange. Very, very liquid right now. There's been a lot of soup. My wife makes the best soup on earth, and we busted out the split pea soup, and we've busted out the butternut squash, and I've had a lot of smoothies. I am the smoothie king right now, and it's been a liquid diet. I'm going to lose weight this week. I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, see, maybe I'm the one that needs to bite my tongue. I'm looking down at my belly. I'm like, hey, I could lose, another 5.
I tried some hard food on Sunday night. It didn't go so well. Gets trapped in the teeth. Not good for the tongue with the stitches with the thing going on.
Yeah, just don't do that again, man. That looked horrible.
It was gruesome, and I didn't even put up all the blood, which would have made it more gruesome. So, yes, it was a weird weekend. That's all I'm going to say. I mean, all the way around, from the Yankees, Penguins skating the Stanley Cup. My wife was – you'll appreciate this. My wife and I went to see Bryan Adams at Pier 6 on Sunday night, and my wife got the bright idea right around 8:15 that the hockey game was coming on, and we watched the Stanley Cup Game 6, all 3 periods, even the third period, walking back through the harbor on my wife's phone. So we are like almost millennials, almost, if you think about it.
Well, that's the beautiful thing, man. I love it. I mean, you would have to pick. Right?
Yeah.
I mean,
do you want to go to the game, or do you want to watch the game, or you want to go to the concert? Now you can do both. And be equally distracted. On the way home, she's like, did he play Heaven? Did he play somebody? And I'm like, yeah. She's like, I was watching the game, man. Anyway, God bless my wife. I met her at a hockey game. What do you want me to say? 14 years ago.
There you go, man.
She loves hockey, and she was cursing like a sailor at the Pittsburgh Penguins skating the cup, which makes me love her even more.
Got a whole off season to still curse them.
Oh, jeez. Here we go. Day 1, all out of the gate. Maury, love you, man. Appreciate you. Be well.
All right, Nestor, you take care of yourself. Thanks for having me.
You got it. Thanks for hanging in there with my my lisp after I bit my tongue open. Bizball Maury is the way to follow him out on Twitter. Nasty at WNST.net is the way to find me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, the Buy a Toyota Audio Vault, the morning newspaper brought to you by PlanetFitness.com. All the stuff we do around here. When I can speak in complete sentences, I shall. Until then, we are WNST.net, AM 1570 and WNST Towson, Baltimore, and we never stop talking Baltimore sports.